Okay, so welcome to another Python tutorial here in this Python mini series. Today we're going to be talking about functions, and we've already mentioned variables and print statements, so we're going to be using those a little bit today. But functions are important because they basically are kind of the building blocks of our program. They separate things into chunks and kind of organize it nicely so you don't have to write the same code over and over and over again. You can just call on your function in your program and it'll have a block of code in it, and you can run that just by calling the function rather than having to recode everything that's inside the function. And so let's go ahead and start. So what you do when you create a function, it's actually called defining a function. And so we're going to type def for define, and I'm just going to call this my function, and then we put parentheses and a colon. So the parentheses in the function are actually for something called parameters, and I'll get to those in detail in a moment, but basically it's just so you can pass information to the function when you're calling on it. Like, let's say you wanted to send some information to the function to be used with the code that you're going to put inside of the function. You would go ahead and put that in between those parentheses right here. So let's go ahead and plus return and just write a simple print statement to make it easy. So let's just do look mom function. Alright, so a simple function there, just a print statement. And to call this function, I'm just going to go down here, and later in your program in another function, or just anywhere outside of the scope of this function, we can call it by just typing the function's name. As you see how it comes up there, you can tab autocomplete that. It's the name of your function, and then just these parentheses here. So let's go ahead and run this right now and see what happens. And there we go. The code inside of our function ran. So let's go ahead and talk about those parameters. So let's say we want to pass some useful information to our function. Like maybe outside of our function we have some global variables here. Ugh, can't talk today. Maybe just x and y. So let's just say x equals mom, just some string variables here. Y equals dad. Alright, so let's say we want to pass both of these to our function. We're just going to put them inside these parentheses here to x and y. And then we also need to put those in the parentheses up here to pass them to the function. So let's go ahead and just replace that. We have mom right here, so we can go ahead and just pass that information off. So now we have x included in our print statement. So let's go ahead and run that. You can just go down here if you already have the console open. There we go. It replaced it with x. So what we have right here is the x. Basically, we set a variable equal to the string mom. We called on our function. X basically took the value right here and it got passed up to our function here and was used in the print statement. So it appears at first sight, it's kind of a common mistake to think right off the bat, but it looks like, okay, we have x, and x is x here, and then there's x here, and then that's x, and it's all x, x is mom, and so that's why it's here. But really, it's actually the order in which you place the variables here. So, or whatever information you're passing. Um, it's not necessarily that, it got carried over because it's x. It's basically like there's the first argument and then the second argument, separated by this comma here. And whatever comes before the comma here is going to be whatever becomes before the comma in the function. So it doesn't really matter what you put here. It's not, I mean, you definitely need to pass the correct variable here, but you could put something totally different here, and it would basically just still hold the same value that was before the comma that you put right here. And I can show you an example of that right here. So we leave x and y here, but we can go ahead and switch these. And now we have x on the right side. And let's go ahead and just see what happens now that I switched it. So now you see it says dad. Even though we still have x here, it says dad. And that's because, like I said, it's the order in which you place the arguments. So even though y equals dad here, since I flip-flopped them, it's really the function, Python's looking at it as, okay, the first value that was passed, is mom. The second value that was passed is dad. It just looks at the placeholder here. So that's just something to be clear of when you're working with parameters and functions. But that's about all we're going to do today. We can cover some more about functions later. You can go ahead and add some more variables and practice calling it, and maybe create a function, another function that has all this, and then call that function. So you can kind of just see how the flow of things go when you are using your blocks of code, and learn more about the scope of things. But until then, see you next time in the next tutorial.